Don't really understand how I ended up here, dashing around and losing sight of myself in the process. I think that's been the story of my whole life.
All one wants is for that girl to find peace.
I'm okay. It has all been a bit mad recently.
I'm afraid, Your Majesty.
Diana gave people what they needed, and they adored her for it.
Thank you for clicking on my video, and if you're returning, welcome back to my channel. Today, I wanted to talk about my feelings about The Crown Season 6, Part 1. We will get Part 2 on December 14th, and of course, as you know, this is the final season of The Crown, and it is intended to end at around 2005 with, I believe, the marriage of Charles and Camilla will cap off the end of the story according to The Crown. They were originally going to go until the death of Queen Elizabeth II, but they chose not to. Peter Morgan stated that he felt it would be a lot more appropriate and be more final to end it in 2005. I have my feelings about that. I'm not really sure why you wouldn't follow the story until the death of the monarch, since you have this entire show depicting her time as queen and her ascension to the throne and the challenges that she faced, why you wouldn't want to follow her life until completion. But I feel like there was an intentional choice made to not include the years of 2016 until 2020. And those are just my feelings. Queen Elizabeth passed away in 2022, but I personally feel like with some of the statements made by the show's creator that there was an intentional choice to not include certain people who became part of the royal family, and I will give more of my opinion on that. Again, that is just an opinion, so I don't want that to color the way that I recap Season 6, Part 1. If you have seen my tweets, which I probably should not have tweeted before giving my official review, then you know somewhat my feelings about this season. We talked about this before. During the promotion of this season, I read through Peter Morgan's interview with Variety. We've talked about a lot of the different trailers that have come out. We've actually showed a number of times where Prince Harry has said he likes the show, and because the show is fiction, he has no problem with it. And he made the joke on Stephen Colbert that he likes to fact check the show. But it is also known that he will likely not watch this season, probably for the same reasons that I didn't want to. And it was because I did not want to see the death of Princess Diana. I felt like, I was a kid, but I was an old enough kid to remember living through that and how sad that was. And that was a moment in time that I think everyone who was alive will remember where they were, what they were doing when they found out. That was a horrible time. How many people want to relive that? And as you get older, you kind of start to understand people in a different way. And looking back on her story, the older I've gotten, the more and more sad it actually has appeared to me, because I have more realization now as an adult and I understand things a little bit better and I get the complexities. So her story ended in a tragic manner, but she had a year of happiness and freedom that I like to remember her by more than anything else, because that was the year that I call her year. So this season, Part 1, depicts the end of life for Princess Diana, the summer and her last vacation leading up to her passing in the early summer of 1997. This season depicts the relationship between Diana, Princess of Wales, and Dodi Al-Fayed. It included well-known facts, little-known details, and the biggest scandals making headlines at that time. It was true to form and including the scandals. Now, I am no expert, but having done a little bit of research via credible sources into the lives of all of the people depicted, it is abundantly clear that this season is rife with Flanderization. They depict Muhammad Al-Fayed as a status-crazed maniac who was willing to steamroll his son to achieve validation from the British elite. They depict Dodi Al-Fayed as a marshmallow of a man willing to break his own spirit for any semblance of approval from his father. Camilla is depicted as an innocent, noble, and patient lovelorn soulmate dutifully awaiting path to be with her paramour. Never mind her philanderous ways in real life. We don't need to see that here, I suppose. Charles is depicted as patient, kind, and willing to go to the ends of the earth for his mother's approval, Camilla's heart, and his son's admiration. While this is somewhat true in some aspect, I feel that they gave Charles a very fluffy edit, and I think this was intentional. Princess Diana appears as a self-assured, hardworking woman with a vision, fully dedicated to her new role as ironed out between herself and Tony Blair, and it appears that she's open to new experiences and fun and 100% committed to her sons. This, they got right. Although there were moments where they depicted Princess Diana as needlessly petty without acknowledging the back and forth between both her and Charles, and I thought that was a missed opportunity for more truth. Lastly, the Queen appears in this season as firm and as assertive as ever, solid in her decision-making and her value system, but not completely immovable. She readily expresses her discontent with the choices made by Prince Charles and Camilla and Princess Diana, as she is extremely disappointed in the breaking down of two families. Of all of the characters this season, Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana are the two whose essence rang most true. I felt the overbearing and outlandish caricature they turned Muhammad Al-Fayed into was intentional and outright mean-spirited. There was so much more to Mr. Al-Fayed than that, and although he was ambitious and seized opportunities, he was not this joke of a man that they displayed on our screens. They may as well have put Rumpelstiltskin in this role. It was very unfair. I resent the fact that they eagerly show you Prince Charles's grief, but use Muhammad Al-Fayed's pain of losing his beloved son to further paint him as a social climbing maniac. That man was devastated and very, very heartbroken over the loss of his son until his dying day. He spared no expense, time, or energy to get to the bottom of Dodi Al-Fayed's passing, and in my opinion, he put forth 10 times more effort to gain clarity than the entire royal family regarding that crash. The show should be ashamed of itself for mocking both Dodi Al-Fayed and Muhammad Al-Fayed. They were both people at the end of the day, with entire lives lived outside of this snapshot of a moment in time. If you're going to depict someone on our screens for your show, fiction or not, you should at least attempt to humanize them fairly. While I am fully aware yet again that this show is fiction, I've spoken about it many times. One of the things that bugged me was the choice to show Dodi Al-Fayed proposing to Princess Diana only to receive a resounding no. By all accounts, Dodi Al-Fayed did not propose to Princess Diana. However, evidence provided at an inquest showed that Dodi Al-Fayed had purchased a ring for Diana, and that was widely assumed to be an engagement ring, and it very well may have been. They did appear to be very in love. However, he did not propose, which means the rejection and the long scene that they decided to show us of Diana rejecting this pitiful man was all made up. The writers, in their wildest dream, could not deal with a character of color without pummeling them into damn near obscurity. They also show, like I said, a long, drawn-out rejection of a wilting and a desperate Dodi Al-Fayed, clamoring his way to Diana's heart in order to achieve the greatest win of all, his father's acceptance. I feel like this does a disservice to both Dodi Al-Fayed's image and Princess Diana as a person. By all accounts, and by everyone who knows them, Dodi Al-Fayed was just as much in love with Princess Diana as Princess Diana was in love with him. And maybe it wasn't love, maybe it was infatuation, but whatever it was absolutely mutual. And to reduce their relationship down to, well, he only liked her in order to social climb for his dad is insulting. Diana was an amazing woman who would not be in love with her. I can tell you who was, and it appeared to be Dodi Al-Fayed. It also depicts him in a way that he never showed us, and the people who know him don't speak of him that way. And so I really didn't appreciate the show using its two characters of color as their kicking mules in this season. Not a fan of that. Again, I'll say, the story is fiction. A fictionalized story based on very, very loosely related people. However, the place you choose to flex your creative license is to tear down the characters of Muhammad and Dodi Al-Fayed, show them on the brink of mental and emotional collapse, only to be held together by any small semblance of approval from Princess Diana and the potential upper crust of high society. It felt egregious. And while those elements of social climbing may have been true, it's insane to take a person as successful as Muhammad Al-Fayed and minimize him the way that they did. It felt kind of personal to me. And while I am disappointed, I must say I'm not surprised. Peter Morgan, The Crown's creator, also clarified his stance on the royal family. When asked if Morgan was a Republican or a monarchist, he takes a long time to answer, starting and then stopping before eventually reaching a conclusion. Quote, I probably am a monarchist, but out of appreciation for what they do when they do it well, he says. I think if we're all adults, we would say that the system makes no sense and is unjust in the modern democracy, but I'm not sure Britain would be Britain without a monarchy. And in our agony of not being able to work out what we really think of them, we end up buying endless newspapers that treat them in the way that they do, none of which is helpful. In essence, curating projects centering the royal family has become Peter Morgan's best-known work and his cash cow. So to not be a monarchist at this point would appear at the very least ungrateful and at best disconcerting. Despite the many assurances given throughout the promo interviews, they did in fact depict the crash. As a matter of fact, it was the opener for the season, shown in the first minute. And while they didn't show the car, nor Princess Diana, Dodi Al-Fayed, or the driver as injured parties or even bodies, they did show everything leading up to it, as well as the noises emitting from the crash. They also showed Prince Charles going to identify Princess Diana's body, as well as his emotional breakdown. By their many confirmations that the crash wouldn't be shown, I mistakenly took that to mean that it would not be depicted in any way. And it's my own fault that I assumed that we would learn of the tragedy via a character's phone call or a news segment on television or something of that nature. But to open the show in that manner was quite a choice. Now, I suppose they saw it fit to burn it all down since the series finale is now and they don't have to come back, so they don't have to really care about ratings. But in my opinion, I thought it was egregious and I thought it was tactless. There was a better way to do that. And for the many, many people who watch this show who actually lived through the death of Princess Diana, I hope that that was not triggering for you. But it would be very optimistic to assume that it wasn't. So be warned, if you're going to watch the show, the crash is in there. And while you don't see twisted metal nor passing away people, it is very much there as the opener. For weeks, I have been seeing many, many people weigh in on this alleged ghost. There was a rumor supported by still frames that Princess Diana posthumously speaks to Prince Charles to reassure him of his capability to father their children upon her death. People ran wild with this theory, and many were very furious, calling the choice callous and unnecessary. Peter Morgan yet again spoke out in that same interview with Variety to clarify what actually happens in the scene and provide depth into his decision. Responding to the Daily Mail's print edition carrying the story alongside an essay by a royal historian calling the series cruel, farcical, and a sick joke, and slamming Peter Morgan for straying from the truth, for the record, the princess's posthumous appearance is not meant to be supernatural. Quote, I never imagined it as Diana's ghosts. In the traditional sense, Morgan says, it was her continuing to live vividly in the minds of those she has left behind. Diana was unique, and I suppose that's what inspired me to find a unique way of representing her. She deserved special treatment narratively. Now, upon watching it in full, I can say for myself, it appeared like a regular ghost visiting Charles as previously assumed. And despite Peter Morgan's assurances that she deserved special treatment and so he looked for a unique way of representing her, it didn't stop there. Dodi Al-Fayed was also depicted as a ghost visiting his father Muhammad, and they continued to work through things that had previously plagued their relationship. Which kind of contradicts the fact that he said Diana was special and needed special treatment. It just seems like he needed something to say to assuage the issues because he wanted to depict her as a ghost. There was a way to have that moment, especially with the creative license that you guys have flexed this entire time. It's interesting to me that you would choose to make both Princess Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed ghosts. There was no reason for it. It didn't push the story forward. It didn't contribute anything. And it did feel callous. After watching it, I held out hope that it was everything that Peter Morgan said it would be, because I read the interview before I saw the show. So I went in thinking there's not going to be a crash and these ghosts are not going to be what people are making it out to be. And the show just proved that all the assumptions that were made were 100% accurate. Can't make this stuff up. So there were ghosts. And while the moment was supposed to be sentimental, it just felt more insulting to me. I'm not going to lie. I just hated this season, but let's continue. This season is a far cry from The Crown as I remember it. And as things continue, they will evolve and change, but I just didn't expect it to go down in quality. I discovered The Crown in season 3. And once I saw one episode in season 3, I went back and I binged the whole series, back to back to back. I loved The Crown, and I have loved it since. And it was enjoyable to watch. Even things that I knew for a fact they'd gotten wrong, the show was very well put together, and I just enjoyed it for what it was. This season, however, felt rushed, a little bit dark, and intentionally dismissive of important details. It also felt deliberately mischaracterizing, opting to prevaricate during Princess Diana's most iconic moments, and belabor any possible opportunity for sympathy that could be found in Charles's story. I also found it odd, to say the least, that the show had time to gratuitously limn a rejected proposal between Princess Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed, however couldn't make room for the actual scandal of Prince Charles choosing his children to walk behind Princess Diana's casket with him so that he wouldn't receive any backlash from the public because of how he had treated her. He used his kids as meat shields, yet the show ignores that in favor of a falsified proposal where they excessively batter upon Dodi Al-Fayed's image. It's very clear Peter Morgan wanted to please the royal family with this final season, no matter who he had to steamroll over to do so. But he also steamrolled his reputation. I am not even going to waste your time. I give this 2 out of 5 stars. And the only reason it has that rating is because 1 star goes to the production quality. It is still top tier, and this is an absolutely beautiful show to watch. And 2, the actors showed up and showed out. Do you hear me? Let's start with Elizabeth Debicki. Her portrayal of Princess Diana is by far my favorite. She definitely did her homework and she nailed it. She was very fun to watch and she did a wonderful job. She's also in the movie Tenet, so I recommend you check that out. Dominic West. Whew. Dominic. The veteran acting savant that you are, 10s across the board, no notes. Salim Daw. He is the man who played Muhammad Al-Fayed. He did such an amazing job of humanizing Muhammad. Despite the material he was given, his talent prevailed and he definitely shined through. Rufus Campa, the person who played young Prince William, he acted his butt off. Now, I wanted to start a petition for him to replace the real William in real life because the one we have now is a dud. Rufus Campa, I hereby bequeath you, Prince of Wales. Could you discard the one we already have on your way out, please? Thank you. And everyone, of course, did a phenomenal job. But I must say, most of all, hats off all day, every day to the one and only Imelda Staunton for her portrayal of Queen Elizabeth II. A person as complex as Queen Elizabeth is probably very challenging to portray on screen because she is not one for dramatics, barely speaks above a whisper, and she is stoic by nature. Even in times of crisis, it could be really easy to portray her as like almost a bump on a log if her role isn't done by the right person. If it's not in the right hands, she could actually get left behind when it comes to these big personalities on screen. Alongside Helen Mirren, Imelda Staunton and Claire Foy both brought Queen Elizabeth from a figure of resilience and duty to a human with a love so deep for her country she sacrificed everything, including many of her own personal joys for it. And they helped that to read through on screen. There's this moment where Imelda Staunton squeezes her hands and she's kind of clenching her gloves in this moment where her face is giving firm, assertive, I can do this, I'm self-assured, but her hands are telling the story. And it's just like, ma'am, you are acting from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. You are giving it. She is a phenomenal actress. Anytime she is on screen, I could not take my eyes off her. I was looking at everything, the way she tapped her pen, the way she rubbed her hands together, the way she played with the dog, the side-eye glances, even the way that she would structure her neck when something caught her off guard. Imelda Staunton, you will forever be queen. And I will say this, you are officially forgiven for what you did at Hogwarts. I'm going to let it go, all because of the way you portrayed the queen. If you know, you know. And again, I want to state, this show is fiction. But since they are showing fictionalized stories based on real people and events, I want to share some of the fact-checking notes from USA Today that I found. And I think it was really cool that they did this. First, the question was asked, did Dodi Al-Fayed really leave his fiancée just before their wedding because of Diana? Now, when Diana and Dodi began their initial relationship, he was engaged to American model Kelly Fisher, played by Aaron Richards. He broke off their engagement to pursue Princess Diana, and it had major consequences. As the show portrays, she tried to sue him. It generated a lot of publicity, but she dropped the case when he passed away, because of course. Next question. Did Charles really scheme with his publicist to do a counter photo with the boys? There were photos of Prince Charles, Prince William, and Prince Harry taken at Balmoral in August of 1997, but they didn't exactly happen as the show portrays. Tim Graham, a well-known photographer, took those photos on August 16th, and not the small-time Scottish photographer that the series invents. The photos also weren't quite as out of character for either Charles's family or other royals when they were at Balmoral, as the show portrays. The royals routinely had planned photo shoots at the estate while on vacation, and they still do. That is true. Did Dodi propose to Diana in Paris on the day of the crash? I've already answered this, but let's see what USA Today has to say. In the series, Dodi makes Diana stop in Paris on the trip where they would soon die to buy an engagement ring he thinks she wants. He then proposes to her, but she says no. And when I tell y'all they dragged this rejection out, quote, "It is said he bought a ring. She was not going to marry him." A 1998 book by Time magazine correspondent Tom Sankton and Scott McCloud about Diana's death suggests that Dodi planned to propose. At an inquest in 2007, evidence was presented that Dodi went to the Reposi shop on the Place Vendôme, I'm so sorry if I didn't say that correctly, in Paris on August 30th and purchased a diamond ring. But he did not propose. Was Charles secretly campaigning for Camilla's legitimacy while Diana was still alive? The first episode of the new season shows Charles working hard to get positive press coverage of his long-loved Camilla Parker Bowles. He also tries to convince his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, to legitimize Camilla as his partner by attending her birthday party, which Elizabeth refuses to do. Vickers says Charles was definitely trying to put Camilla on the map and increase her popularity in the country. However, the so-called campaign was somewhat put on hold after Princess Diana's death. That is true. The show implies that Dodi had spurious motives courting Diana, egged on by his father. How much do we know about that? And their response was Mohammed Al-Fayed bought the yacht Jonical especially to entertain Diana. Vickers says the motives were rather as shown in snaring Diana. It's impossible to know Dodi's personal motives or feelings. It's interesting that it's impossible to know his personal feelings, but you went full steam ahead at depicting him as this calculated person. I'm not a fan of that. Abdallah and Debicki say that they studied hundreds of photographs and hours of surveillance footage of Dodi and Diana on the day of the crash. They watched it all, second by second, minute by minute, Abdallah says. You see this incredibly tender handhold behind their backs and their heads nuzzled against each other and very gentle caressing for 7 minutes. And from that, you understand the tenderness of a certain kind of falling in love, which completely contradicts. Anyway. I'm not going to belabor the point, but you see where I'm going with this.
As important as their personal chemistry was Dodi's relationship with the boys. He rented a disco for 2 nights so that Diana and her children could dance in private, while those who watched him with William and Harriet noticed that they seemed at ease in his company. They were relaxed, full of knowing looks, and obviously comfortable together, observed a crew member. It was the best holiday of my life. Mohammed Al-Fayed encouraged his son's budding relationship, unashamedly making clear his ambitions for his eldest son. "I did give them my blessing," he said. Diana was not only beginning to find inner peace, but was prepared for the man she so keenly awaited to enter her life. She was ready for romance. "Don't worry, I'm not going to elope," she told a friend as she flew off in a Harrods jet for a cruise off the Sardinian coast, alone with the new man in her life. She told friends that she felt that in Dodi, so warm, affectionate, and endlessly attentive, she had at last found a man who appreciated her for herself and wanted nothing from her but her own happiness. She laughed and laughed with him, said Sandra Mott, as Dodi told his ex-wife Suzanne Gregard. "Diana and I are having a romance, a true romance." His long-standing friends noted that Dodi seemed more settled and serious, determined that he and Diana should make their relationship work. What had started as a silly season story was now taken more seriously. As a further sign of her affection, she gave him a pair of cufflinks, which had belonged to her father. She said that she knew that it would give him joy to know they were in such safe and special hands. With him, she didn't feel lonely anymore. "Elsa, I adore him. I have never been so happy," the princess told her friend, Lady Elsa Bowker. Diana was said to be impressed with a diamond ring in the window of Alberto Rapossi's jewelry store in Place Beaumarchais. It was from a collection of engagement rings called Tell Me Yes. It was unclear if the ring symbolized a more lasting union, a signal that yes, at last she had found true peace and happiness. "Just tell me, is it bliss?" asked Rosa Monckton. Her reply said it all. Yes, bliss. Then the heavens cracked open and claimed her.
Those are my thoughts on part 1. If you have not seen it yet, do you plan to watch part 1 of The Crown Season 6? And if you have seen it yet, what did you think of part 1? Now, just because I've shared my opinion does not mean I am not excited to hear what you have to say. I don't mind if you don't agree with me or if you do, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts. So if you have watched The Crown part 1 on Netflix, let me know what you think. And if you haven't, do you plan to watch? Lastly, if you have watched part 1, do you plan to watch part 2? Now, I do not plan to move beyond this point. Part 1 ends with Princess Diana passing and Queen Elizabeth saying a prayer, and it ends there. And that just felt really final. And I honestly think that could have been the end of the show. That is how they could have ended the series. I'm curious as to how they're going to end the series after everything. I'm not interested in part 2 because they're going to show the budding relationship between Will and Kate. Not really interested in that. So what I will do is watch the last episode of part 2 just to see how they round everything off and end this with a bang. But I'm not really interested in getting invested in the story. I just want to see what they're going to do out of morbid curiosity. What do you think? Did you watch part 1? Do you plan to watch part 2? And if you didn't watch either one, do you plan to? That's all I have for you today. If you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on that notification bell. And if you feel so inclined, please don't forget to share so more people can find the channel and we can get to 20K subscribers. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Bye.